Your time and expertise are valuable, making focus one of the most important resources to have at work. These days, professionals spend nearly half the work week on written communication, and it can be difficult to stay on task with all the emails and documents you have to get through. With Grammarly as your AI writing partner, you can stay focused and quickly get through your work with relevant real-time suggestions wherever you write. It works across 500,000 apps and websites, so it can help with everything, from brainstorming presentation ideas to sounding more confident and persuasive in emails and reports. For 15 years, Grammarly has offered best-in-class communication support and enterprise-grade security on a business model that doesn't sell your data. 93% of professionals report that Grammarly helps them get more work done. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's GRAMMARLY.com/podcast.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
How to Own Your Own Mind by Napoleon Hill. Chapter 1, Creative Vision. A philosopher said, "The imagination is the workshop of man wherein is fashioned the pattern of all his achievements." Another thinker described it as, "the workshop of the soul wherein man's hopes and desires are made ready for material expression." This chapter describes the methods by which some of the great leaders of America have, through the application of creative vision, made the American way of life the envy of the world. This chapter begins in the private study of Andrew Carnegie in 1908, with me, Napoleon Hill, as the student and reporter. Hill. Mr. Carnegie, you have said that creative vision is one of the principles of individual achievement. Will you analyze this principle and describe how one may make practical use of it? Carnegie. First of all, let us have a clear understanding of the meaning of the term, creative vision, as we are here using it, by explaining that this is not merely another name for imagination. It is the ability to recognize opportunities and take action to benefit from them. An important element of creative vision is the use of the imagination. There are two types of imagination. One is known as synthetic imagination and the other as creative imagination. Synthetic imagination consists of the act of combining recognized ideas, concepts, plans, facts, and principles in new arrangements. The old axiom, "there is nothing new under the sun," grew out of the fact that the majority of things which seem to be new are nothing but a rearrangement of that which is old. Practically all the patents recorded in the patent office are nothing more than old ideas which have been arranged in a new order, or given a new use. Patents which do not come under this heading are known as basic patents, and they are the work of creative imagination, that is, they are based on newly created ideas which have not been previously used or recognized. Creative imagination has its source, as far as science has been able to determine, in the subconscious mind, wherein exists, through some power unknown to science, the ability to perceive and interpret new ideas. It is believed, by some, that the faculty of creative imagination truly is the workshop of the soul. Of one fact we can be sure, and that is the undeniable reality of the existence of a faculty of the mind through which some men perceive and interpret new ideas never before known to man. Later I shall cite well-known examples of such ability. Moreover, I shall endeavor to describe how this ability may be developed and made to serve practical ends. Hill. Which of the two types of imagination is used more often in the field of industry, and in the ordinary walks of life? Carnegie. Synthetic imagination is more commonly used. Creative imagination, as the name implies, is used only by those who have attained the means to apply this unusual skill. Hill. Will you mention examples of the application of both types of imagination, giving as many of the details as possible in order that the practical methods of application of these principles may be understood? Carnegie. Well, let us take the work of Thomas A. Edison, for example. By studying his achievements we shall see how he made use of both types of imagination, although he used the synthetic type more often. His first invention to attract worldwide attention was created by bringing together, in a new combination, two old and well-known principles. I refer to the incandescent electric lamp, the perfection of which was attained only after Mr. Edison had tried more than 10,000 different combinations of old ideas without satisfactory results. Hill. Do you mean, Mr. Carnegie, that Mr. Edison had the persistence to keep on trying in the face of 10,000 failures? Carnegie. Yes, I mean just that. And I may as well here call your attention to the fact that men with a keen sense of imagination seldom quit trying until they find the answer to their problems. Mr. Edison perfected the incandescent electric lamp by combining two well-known principles in a new way. The first of these principles was the established fact that by applying electric energy to both ends of a piece of wire a resistance is established through which the wire becomes heated to a white glow that will produce light. That principle had been known long before the time of Mr. Edison's experiments with the electric lamp, but the trouble arose from the fact that no way had been found to control the heat. Perhaps the facts would be better understood if I said that no form of metal or other substance had been found that could carry the necessary amount of heat to make a satisfactory light for more than a few seconds. The intense heat of the electricity soon burned out the metal. After trying every known substance he could find, without discovering anything that would serve the desired purpose, Mr. Edison stumbled upon another well-known principle which proved to be the answer to his problem. I say he stumbled upon it, but perhaps that is not the precise way the principle came to his attention. Of that I shall have more to say later on. At any rate, there came into his mind the well-known principle by which charcoal is produced, and he recognized in it the answer to the problem that had caused him more than 10,000 failures. Briefly explained, charcoal is produced by placing a pile of wood on the ground, setting it on fire, and then covering the whole pile with dirt. The dirt permits just enough air to pass through to the fire to keep it alive and smoldering but not enough to enable the fire to blaze. The smoldering process continues until the wood becomes charred through and through, leaving the log intact, in the form of a substance known as charcoal. You of course learned, in the study of physics, that where there is no oxygen there can be no fire, that by controlling the inflow of oxygen the amount of heat of the fire can be controlled proportionately. Mr. Edison had known of this principle long before he began experimenting with the electric lamp, but not until after he had gone through thousands of tests did he think of it as being the principle for which he was searching. As soon as this principle was recognized as the one for which he was searching, he went into his laboratory, placed a coiled wire in a bottle, pumped out all the air, sealed the bottle with wax, applied the electric energy to the two ends of the wire, and lo! The world's first successful incandescent electric lamp was born. The crudely constructed lamp burned for more than 8 hours. Of course it is obvious as to what had happened. By placing the wire in a vacuum that contained no oxygen it could be heated sufficiently to cause it to produce a light without its burning out entirely, as it had done when left in the open air. That same principle is used in the making of all incandescent electric lamps today, although the method has been greatly refined until the modern electric lamp is much more efficient than it was when Edison first discovered how to control the heat. Now, let us go back to the question as to how Mr. Edison came to think of combining these two old principles in a new way. I said he stumbled upon the idea of using the charcoal principle as a means of controlling the heat of the electric energy. But that is not exactly the way this idea occurred to him. Here begins, then, the entry into the picture of the principle of creative imagination. By his repetition of thought in connection with his problem, carried on over a long period of time, through thousands of experiments, Mr. Edison either consciously or unconsciously charged his subconscious mind with a clear picture of his problem, and, by some queer power which no one understands, his subconscious mind handed over to him the solution to his problem, in the form of a hunch, that caused him to think of the charcoal principle. In describing the experience many years afterward, Mr. Edison said that when the hunch came to him he recognized it immediately as being the missing link for which he had been searching. Moreover, he felt assured it would work, even before he tested it. He made the further significant statement that when the idea of using the charcoal principle flashed into his mind, it brought with it a feeling of assurance of its suitability such as did not accompany any one of the other thousands of similar ideas he had tested, through synthetic imagination. From this statement we may draw the conclusion that the subconscious mind not only has the power to create the solution to problems, but it also has a means of forcing one to recognize the solution when it is presented to the conscious mind. Hill. From what you have said, Mr. Carnegie, I conclude that persistence was of the essence of Mr. Edison's discovery of the solution to his problem. Carnegie. Yes, and some other factors, too. First of all, he began his research with definiteness of purpose, thus applying perhaps the most important of the principles of individual achievement. He knew the nature of his problem, but equally as important as this, he was determined to find its solution. Therefore he backed his definiteness of purpose with an obsessional desire for its attainment. Obsessional desire is the state of mind which serves to clear the mind of fear and doubt and self-imposed limitations, thereby opening the way for that state of mind known as faith. By his refusal to accept defeat, through more than 10,000 failures, Mr. Edison prepared his mind for the application of faith. Hill. Were all of Mr. Edison's inventions created through the joint application of creative imagination and synthetic imagination, as in the case of the incandescent electric lamp?
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now, during our Black Friday sale, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus free home delivery when you add a base. And Cyber Monday. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
Carnegie. Oh, no. Not by any means. The majority of his inventions were created solely through the aid of synthetic imagination, by the trial-and-error method of experimentation. But he did complete one invention solely through the aid of creative imagination, and as far as I know, this was the only invention he perfected through this principle alone. I have reference to the phonograph. That was a new idea. No one before Edison, as far as is known, had ever produced a machine that would record and reproduce the vibrations of sound. Hill. What technique did Mr. Edison use in the application of creative imagination in perfecting the talking machine? Carnegie. The technique was very simple. He impressed his subconscious mind with the idea of a talking machine and there passed over to his conscious mind a perfect plan for the building of such a machine. Hill. Do you mean that Edison relied on creative imagination entirely? Carnegie. Yes, entirely. And one of the strange features of this particular invention of Mr. Edison's is the fact that the plan which his subconscious mind yielded to him worked almost from the first attempt to apply it. The idea of how such a machine could be produced flashed into Edison's mind. He sat down then and there and drew a rough picture of the machine, handed it to his model maker and asked him to produce the machine, and in a matter of hours it had been finished, tested, and lo! It worked. Of course the machine was crude, but it was sufficient to prove that Edison's creative imagination had not failed him. Hill. You say that Mr. Edison impressed his subconscious mind with the idea of a talking machine. Now, how did he go about doing this, and how long did it require before his subconscious mind handed over to him the working principle of the machine? Carnegie. I am not sure that Mr. Edison stated exactly how long he had been thinking of such a machine before his subconscious mind picked up his thoughts and translated them into a perfected plan, but I am under the impression it was not more than a few weeks, at most. Perhaps not more than a few days. His method of impressing his subconscious mind with his desire consisted of the simple procedure of converting that desire into an obsession. That is, the thought of a machine that would record and reproduce sound became the dominating thought of his mind. He focused his mind on it, through concentration of his interest, and made it the major occupant of his mind from day to day until this form of autosuggestion penetrated his subconscious mind and registered a clear picture of his desire. Hill. Is that the way one connects the conscious mind with the subconscious, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie. Yes, that is the simplest known method. You see, therefore, why I have emphasized the importance of intensifying one's desires until they become obsessional. A deep, burning desire is picked up by the subconscious and acted upon much more definitely and quickly than an ordinary desire. A mere wish appears to make no impression on the subconscious. Many people become confused as to the difference between a wish and a burning desire which has been stimulated into obsessional proportions by the repetition of thought in connection with the desire. Hill. If I understand you correctly, Mr. Carnegie, the element of repetition is important. Why? Carnegie. Because repetition of thought creates thought habits in the mind which cause the mind to go right on working on an idea without one's conscious effort. Apparently the subconscious concerns itself first with those thoughts which have become habits, and especially if the thoughts have been strongly emotionalized by a deep and burning desire for their realization. Hill. Then anyone may make use of creative imagination by the simple process of charging his subconscious mind with definite desires. Carnegie. Yes, there is nothing to hinder anyone from using this principle, but you must remember that practical results are obtained only by those who have gained discipline over their thought habits, through the process of concentration of interest and desire. Fleeting thoughts which come and go intermittently, and mere wishes, which are about the extent of the average person's thinking, make no impression whatsoever on the subconscious mind. Hill. Will you mention some additional examples of the practical application of the two types of imagination? Carnegie. Well, take the experience of Henry Ford, in connection with his perfection of a self-propelled vehicle, for example. The idea of such a vehicle was first suggested to him by a steam-propelled tractor that was being used to haul a threshing machine. From the first time that he saw the tractor his mind began to work on the idea of a horseless buggy. At first he used only the principle of synthetic imagination by centering his mind on ways and means of converting the steam tractor into a rapid-moving vehicle for the transportation of passengers. The idea became obsessional with him, and it had the effect of conveying his burning desire to his subconscious mind, where it was picked up and acted upon. The action of the subconscious mind suggested to him the use of an internal combustion engine to take the place of the steam engine, and he went to work immediately on the creation of such an engine. Of course he had the experiments of other men in connection with internal combustion gas engines as a guide, but his problem was to find a way to convey the power of the engine to the wheels of a vehicle. He kept his mind charged with his major purpose until, step by step, his subconscious mind presented him with ideas with which he perfected the planetary system of power transmission, which enabled him to perfect his first working model of an automobile. Hill. Will you describe the major factors which entered into the modus operandi of Mr. Ford's mind while he was perfecting the automobile? Carnegie. Yes, that will be very easy. And when I describe them you will have a clear understanding of the working principles used by all successful men, as well as a clear picture of the Ford mind, viz. 1. Mr. Ford was motivated by a definite purpose, which is the first step in all individual achievements. 2. He stimulated his purpose into an obsession by concentrating his thoughts upon it. 3. He converted his purpose into definite plans, through the principle of organized individual endeavor, and put his plans into action with unabating persistence. 4. He made use of the mastermind principle, first, by the harmonious aid of his wife, and second, by gaining counsel from others who had experimented with internal combustion engines and methods of power transmission. Still later, of course, when he began to produce automobiles for sale, he made a still more extensive use of the mastermind principle by allying himself with the Dodge brothers and other mechanics and engineers skilled in the sort of mechanical problems he had to solve. 5. Back of all this effort was the power of applied faith, which he acquired as the result of his intense desire for achievement in connection with his definite major purpose. Hill. Summarized briefly, Mr. Ford's success was due to his having adopted a definite major purpose which he fanned into a white-heat flame of obsession, thus leading to the stimulation of both the faculties of synthetic imagination and creative imagination. Does that state the facts? Carnegie. That tells the story in one sentence. The part of the story that should be emphasized is the fact that Mr. Ford moved with persistence. At first he met with one form of defeat after another. One of his major difficulties was lack of capital with which to carry on his research, before he perfected his automobile. After that came a still greater difficulty in connection with procuring the necessary operating capital to produce his automobiles in quantity production. Then followed a series of difficulties, such as disagreements with the members of his mastermind group, and other similar problems, all of which called for persistence and determination. These qualities Mr. Ford possesses, and I think we might say that he owes his success to his ability to know exactly what he wants and his capacity to stand by his wants with unrelenting persistence. If one single quality stands out in the Ford character, above all others, it is his capacity for persistence. Let me remind you, again, that definiteness of purpose, backed with a form of persistence that assumes the proportion of an obsession, is the greatest of all stimulants of both the synthetic and the creative forms of imagination. The mind of man is provided with a power which forces the subconscious mind to accept and to act upon obsessional desires that are definitely planned. Hill. Will you now cite some other examples of the practical application of imagination? Carnegie. Take, for example, Dr. Alexander Graham Bell's research in connection with the modern telephone. Here we have an example of the use of creative imagination, for Bell's invention was new. Let us say that he, like Edison, stumbled upon the principle that made the telephone practical, while searching for some mechanical device with which he could create a hearing aid for his wife, whose hearing was impaired. Here, again, we find a man who was inspired by a definite purpose which assumed obsessional proportions. His keen sympathy for his wife was the factor that gave obsessional force to his purpose. In this case, as in all others where men give obsessional proportions to their desires, a definite motive was behind his desire.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Motive is the beginning of all desires. Through a long period of research that is too involved in details for description here, Dr. Bell's subconscious mind finally presented him with an idea which served his purpose. It became known to the scientific world as Bell's experiment, the substance of which was this. A ray of light is cast upon a plate of selenium, which sends the ray back to another plate, some distance away, of the same metal. This latter communicates with a galvanic battery, to which a telephone is attached. The words uttered behind the first plate are distinctly heard through the telephone at the end of the second plate. The ray of light, accordingly, has served as a telephone wire. The sound waves have become transformed into light waves, the latter into galvanic waves, and these have become once again sound waves. Thus a new principle for conveying sound waves was uncovered. It has been claimed that the principle, in part, was suggested to Dr. Bell by the experiments of a man by the name of Dolbear. There was a lawsuit over the priority of right to the principle, but Mr. Dolbear lost the suit, and Dr. Bell was declared to have been the discoverer of the working principle of the modern telephone. At any rate, Dr. Bell's desire for a mechanical hearing aid for his wife, backed by a persistent search for such a device, led to the discovery of the principle he needed. It must be remembered that the subconscious mind makes use of every practical means available for revealing knowledge to those seeking it with obsessional desire. It performs no miracles, but it makes intelligent use of all practical media available in carrying out its purpose. Hill. Now, Mr. Carnegie, let us get away from the field of invention and see how the principle of imagination may be applied in the less complicated fields of endeavor. Carnegie. Very well, take for example the first great mail-order house that was established in the United States. Here we have a fine example of synthetic imagination applied to merchandising. A telegraph operator with whom I formerly worked found that he had extra time on his hands which he could not use in connection with his duties as railroad telegrapher. Being a man with an inquisitive type of mind, he began to search for something he could do that would keep him occupied and at the same time add to his income. Here, again, the question of motive entered the picture, the motive of financial gain. After having turned the matter over in his mind for several months, he envisioned a profitable outlet for his efforts by using the idle telegraph line for the purpose of selling watches to his fellow operators in his division, so he ordered half a dozen watches, at wholesale rates, and began to offer them for sale. The idea caught fire from the very beginning. In a very short time he had sold all 6 of the watches. Then, spurred on by his success, his imagination began to expand until he took on other items of jewelry. Everything went well, and he was doing a land office business, until his superintendent found out what he was up to and fired him on the spot. Every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. Out of this telegrapher's adversity was born the first great mail-order house. He switched his method of selling from telegraphy to the mails, using at first a mimeographed catalogue of his wares. Moreover, he added others outside the field of telegraphers to his list of prospective buyers, mainly people living in the villages and rural districts. In a little while his business had grown to where he could afford a printed catalogue illustrated with pictures of his merchandise. From that point on the story is known to millions of people throughout the United States who now purchase merchandise from the mail-order house he established. He then took a partner into the business with him, thereby making use of the mastermind principle. This partner proved to be a veritable gold mine because he had a keen sense of advertising. Several years later the business was sold out to a corporation at a price which made its owners multimillionaires. That was the beginning of mail-order merchandising on a large scale. Now, there was nothing very mysterious about this man's success. He simply put his mind to work on a definite purpose and kept behind that purpose until it made him rich. He did not create anything new. He merely put an old idea to a new use. In this manner many of the great fortunes have been accumulated. Hill. If I understand you correctly, Mr. Carnegie, the telegraph operator applied only the principle of synthetic imagination. Is that correct? Carnegie. Yes, that is it. You see, he did nothing except apply the principle of merchandising in a new way, but do not forget that this is about all that most successful men do. Rarely do men create new ideas, through the application of creative imagination, as Dr. Bell and Mr. Edison did. Now let us take the modern railroad refrigerator car, for example. The man who first made practical application of this principle revolutionized the meatpacking business. He was a packer whose business was limited due to the fact that he could ship fresh meat only a short distance. Motivated by a desire to extend his business over a greater territory, he began to search for a suitable method. A man generally finds whatever he is looking for if he gives his desire obsessional proportions. Well, this packer was motivated by the desire for larger financial gains, so he kept his mind on his problem until it occurred to him to convert an ordinary railroad boxcar into an oversized icebox. There was nothing left to be done except to go to work and experiment with the idea, which he proceeded to do. The plan worked satisfactorily, although the first refrigerator car was a very crude affair. He kept on improving his idea until he had refined it into the modern refrigerator car, as we know it today. His idea not only helped him to extend his meat business almost without limitation, but it gave a new impetus to the sale and distribution of other lines of merchandise, particularly fruits and vegetables. Until today, that single idea has added hundreds of millions of dollars of wealth to individuals, corporations, and the nation as a whole. The refrigerator car was brought into existence solely by the application of synthetic imagination, through the simple process of placing an icebox on wheels, so to speak. George Pullman performed a similar feat by placing beds in railroad coaches, thus converting them into sleeping quarters. There was nothing new about either the beds or the railroad coaches, but the idea of combining these two types of service was new. The new combination made the man who created it an immense fortune, to say nothing of providing thousands of jobs for others and a desirable service for the traveling public, for which it continues to pay a huge sum annually. Ideas, such as these, are the products of imagination. The man who trains his mind to create ideas, or to give old ideas a new and better use, is well on the road toward economic independence. Back of these ideas was the personal initiative of the men who created them, plus the principle of organized individual endeavor through which they were made practical. Both the sleeping car and the refrigerator car had to be promoted and sold, thus necessitating the investment of large amounts of capital. Both of these ideas, and all other similar ideas that are made practical, require the application of some combination of the principles of individual achievement, but in final analysis such ideas generally can be traced back to their originating source, in the imagination of one person. Hill. Will you name the success principles which are most commonly used by those who apply the principle of imagination? Carnegie. Well, that depends somewhat on the nature of the application that is to be made of imagination, and the person making it, but generally speaking the following are the principles which are more often allied with imagination. 1. Definiteness of purpose. The motive which more commonly serves to stimulate the imagination is that of a desire for financial gain. The profit motive has been, without a doubt, the greatest inspiration to the men who have developed industrial America. 2. The mastermind principle, through which men go into a huddle and frankly exchange thoughts with the object of solving business or professional problems, is also a great stimulation of the imagination. It was this principle, more than all others, through which the steel industry of which I was the founder became prosperous. The so-called Round Table is a great institution. When men sit down and begin to pool their ideas, in a spirit of harmony and oneness of purpose, they soon find a solution to most of the problems that confront them, no matter what business they may be engaged in, or what may be the nature of their problems. 3. Going the extra mile comes in prominently for its share of credit as a stimulant to the imagination. When a man makes it a habit to do more than he is paid for, he generally begins to draw upon his imagination for new sources through which to render this sort of service. This fact alone would be sufficient compensation for going the extra mile, even if there were not still greater benefits available. 4. Applied faith is a definite source of stimulation of the imagination. Moreover, it is an essential in connection with the stimulation and application of creative imagination. Men with little or no faith will never receive the benefits of creative imagination. 5. Organized individual endeavor depends directly upon the application of imagination for its effectiveness, as all forms of definite planning are carried on through imagination. There are many other sources of stimulation of the imagination, but these 5 are on the must list. Fear sometimes stimulates the imagination, while of course at other times it paralyzes the imagination. When a man is in great danger, his imagination often performs seemingly superhuman feats, especially where self-preservation is the motive. Failure and temporary defeat sometimes have the effect of stirring one's imagination, although more often they have the opposite effect. The question method which master salesmen often resort to has the effect of arousing the imagination and putting it to work, and the reason for this is obvious. By asking questions, the salesman forces his prospective buyer to think. Moreover, he chooses the line of thought to be engaged in, by the adroitness of his questions. Curiosity often stimulates imagination to a high pitch. Curiosity, growing out of death and the uncertainty of life, and the unknown and perhaps unknowable facts of immortality, has been the chief source of inspiration out of which all the religions have grown. Self-expression, through speaking and writing, is a never-ending source of stimulation of the imagination, as are many other forms of action. The very moment a man begins to organize his thoughts for the purpose of expression, whether through words or deeds, he starts his imagination to work. For this reason children should be encouraged to give free expression to their thoughts, as this develops imagination early in life. Hunger is a universal source of inspiration of imagination. When a man needs food, his imagination goes to work automatically, without any form of urge. In the lower order of life, instinct goes to work in the face of hunger, and I have known of ingenious applications of instinct under such an urge. Thus we see that wherever we touch life, whether in man or the lower orders of organized life, imagination and instinct may be found as essential parts of the individual's working equipment. Concentration of attention on a definite problem or object tends to put the imagination to work immediately. Witness, for example, the astounding achievements of Dr. Elmer R. Gates, who created hundreds of useful inventions by sitting for ideas. The same principle was used by Thomas A. Edison and Dr. Alexander Graham Bell. By fixing their minds on definite objectives, through definiteness of purpose, they put creative imagination to work with far-reaching results. Scientists, and sometimes laymen, put their imaginations to work by setting up hypotheses of facts or ideas which, for the time being, they assume to exist. Scientific research and experiment would hardly be practical if hypothetical cases were not utilized, as often the facts for which they are searching are entirely unknown. Lawyers and trial judges often resort to the use of hypotheses in order to establish facts that cannot be uncovered through any other source. The chemist and the physicist resort to the same method when searching for unknown facts. And so does the doctor, when other means of diagnosis of disease fail him. Detectives often work entirely through the aid of hypotheses in the solution of crime. Right after the war between the states, a foundry owner purchased a large quantity of unused cannonballs which he wished to melt for other uses. Before the balls could be melted conveniently, they had to be broken into small pieces. There seemed no way to do the job except by hiring men to break the balls with heavy hammers, until a man with imagination came along, looked the cannonballs over, discovered that they were hollow inside, and made a very low bid for breaking the entire lot. Moreover, he astonished the foundry man by guaranteeing to break the entire lot himself, and to do it by the following morning. He was given the contract, after which he turned all the balls so the small opening in each appeared on the top side. Then, to the amazement of everyone, he calmly filled the balls with water. The night was very cold, and the following morning the foundry man found every ball nicely broken by the expansion of the frozen contents. His only comment was, "Why didn't I think of that in the first place?" We all have occasion, at times, to wonder why we hadn't used our own imagination when we see others making profitable use of theirs. Hill. Why is it that so few people appear to have a well-developed imagination? Is the capacity for a keen imagination a matter of heredity, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie. No, the faculty of imagination, like all other faculties of the mind, can be developed through use. The reason so many people seem not to have a keen imagination is obvious. Most people allow the faculty of imagination to atrophy, through neglect.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hill. Inasmuch as everyone must use salesmanship, in one way or another, will you illustrate how imagination can be used in selling? Carnegie. Yes, I can give you an endless number of examples of this sort. Take the case of a life insurance agent whom I know, for instance. He began selling insurance after an accident which incapacitated him for any sort of heavy manual labor, and within a year he became the high man in sales in the entire United States in his company. I will give you one illustration that will tell the story of his success. But, before I do so, I think I should tell you that this man became a master at applying the mastermind principle. He also became equally proficient in applying many of the other principles of achievement, among them organized thought. One day he walked into the office of a very distinguished and wealthy lawyer and came out, within half an hour, with an application for $1 million policy on the lawyer's life, although the lawyer was known to have refused to purchase insurance from a half dozen or more of the ablest insurance men of the city in which he lived. And this is the way he did it. He carried with him a fully illustrated newspaper feature story of the lawyer's activities, set in type with a heavy streamer headline which read, "Prominent Lawyer Insures His Brains for $1 Million." The story told how the lawyer had come up from the bottom, through his unusual skill as a corporation attorney, until he was in a position where he commanded the most select clientele in New York City. The story was well written. It carried pictures of the lawyer and the members of his family, including a picture of his Long Island estate. He handed the story to the lawyer and said, "I have made arrangements for this story to be released in over 100 newspapers the moment you prove that you can pass the necessary physical examination. I hardly need to suggest to a man of your intelligence that the story will bring you enough new clients to more than pay the premium on the insurance policy." The lawyer sat down and read the story carefully. When he had finished, he asked how the insurance man had procured so much information about him, and how he managed to get those pictures of his family. "Oh," replied the insurance man, "that was easy. I simply made arrangements with a newspaper syndicate to do the job." The lawyer read the story a second time, made a few corrections in it, handed it back, and said, "Let's have your application blank." The sale was closed in a few minutes, but more than 3 months of preparation went into it before the insurance agent made his call. He left no detail unattended. He made it his business to find out all about the lawyer before the story was written, and saw to it that the story was so prepared that it got under the lawyer's skin at his weakest point, which was his desire for publicity. What he really sold the lawyer was not an insurance policy on his life, but an insurance policy on his vanity. That streamer headline turned the trick. Moreover, the salesman not only earned a fat premium on the sale, but he received $500 from the newspaper syndicate for the exclusive use of the story. Now, that was imagination, or I miss my guess. Salesmen with imagination often sell something entirely different from that which they appear to be selling. The experience of Dr. Harper, a former president of the University of Chicago, aptly illustrates what I mean. Dr. Harper was one of the greatest endowment getters the educational world has ever known. He took a notion to build a new building on the campus that required $1 million endowment. If you wish to see imagination as it is employed by a master, observe the technique through which he got his $1 million. Observe, also, how many of the principles of individual achievement he applied in addition to imagination. First of all, he chose his prospective donors with adroitness, confining the number to 2 well-known Chicago men, both of whom were quite able to donate $1 million. It could not have been purely accidental that these 2 men were known to be bitter enemies. One was a professional politician and the other was the head of the Chicago Street Railway system. For years these 2 men had been fighting each other, a fact which would have meant nothing to anyone with less imagination than Dr. Harper possessed. One day, precisely at 12 o'clock, Dr. Harper strolled into the office of the streetcar magnate, found no one on duty at the outer door, which was exactly as he expected the situation to be, and walked into the streetcar man's private office unannounced. The magnate looked up from his desk, but before he had time to protest, the super salesman said, "I beg your pardon for walking in unannounced, but I found no one in the outer office. My name is Dr. Harper, and I just called to see you for a minute. Please be seated, said the streetcar man. No, thank you, replied the educator, I have only a minute, so I will tell you what I have in mind and then be on my way. I have been thinking, for some time, that the University of Chicago should do something to recognize you for the wonderful job you have done in giving the city the finest street railway system in America, and I had in mind honoring you with a building on the campus to be named for you. When I mentioned the matter to our board, one of the members had the same idea, but he wanted us to honor, naming the streetcar man's enemy, so I just came in to tell you what had happened, with the hope that you might find some way to help me defeat this board member's plan. Well, exclaimed the streetcar man. That is an interesting idea. Do please be seated and let us see what we can work out, will you? I am very sorry, the educator apologized, but I have another engagement in a few minutes and I must hurry on to it, but I tell you what I suggest. You think the matter over during the night and telephone me in the morning if any plan comes to mind that might help me to get the right man's name on that building. Good day, sir. Without leaving any opening for further conversation, the master of imagination bowed himself out. The next morning when he arrived at his office at the university, he found the streetcar man awaiting him. The two men walked inside, remained there about an hour, after which they walked out again, both of them smiling. Dr. Harper carried a check in his hands, waving it back and forth in the air to blot it. The check was for $1 million. The streetcar man had found a way to beat his enemy to the draw, as the clever Dr. Harper figured he would do. Moreover, he had sealed the bargain by delivering the money with the understanding that Dr. Harper would become personally responsible for its acceptance. Now, if it is salesmanship based on imagination that you want, here you have it. Those who knew the streetcar man best said that no other plan that could have been conceived would have succeeded. And that is another thing about these men who develop imagination through its use, they generally know the precise plan that will work. This is an essential part of their training. Hill. Was Dr. Harper's success solely the result of his understanding and use of imagination, or did other factors enter into it? Carnegie. In his case I would say that he used creative vision, and not just imagination alone. Hill. What is the difference between imagination and creative vision? The two terms appear to be synonymous. Carnegie. No, they are not the same. Creative vision is an acquired ability through which one does two very important things, viz., first, he becomes keenly alert in recognizing opportunities favorable to the attainment of his aims and purposes, second, he develops the habit of embracing these opportunities and acting upon them through organized individual endeavor. A man may have a very keen imagination in connection with some specialized line of work, or some technical subject, such, for example, as the inventor, but he may be entirely lacking in the creative vision and action necessary to commercialize his inventive ability. We find this to be true of many inventors. A man may have keen imagination as an artist, as in fact most artists do have, yet be entirely lacking in the creative vision necessary to make a business success of his artistic ability. Do you see the point? Hill. Yes, I see the point plainly. What other factors are associated with creative vision? Carnegie. Well, the best answer I can give you is to describe the procedure of the man who has creative vision. You will observe, from my description, that creative vision overlaps many of the other principles of individual achievement. First, the man with creative vision, such a man as Dr. Harper, develops the alertness of mind to recognize opportunities favorable to his own advancement. Second, he moves with definiteness of purpose in embracing opportunities. Third, he plans every move he makes, through organized endeavor. Fourth, he recognizes and uses the mastermind principle, through which he provides himself with the ability and the knowledge of others. Fifth, he removes limitations from his own mind by recognizing and using applied faith, thereby opening his mind for the guidance of infinite intelligence. No man may possess creative vision without the aid of faith, and this for the reason that faith is of the essence of creative ability. Sixth, he adopts and follows the habit of going the extra mile, thereby attracting favorable opportunities to himself. 7th, he keeps his mind definitely attuned to the circumstances and conditions of those around him, observing not only the general trend of the times, but watching closely the problems, needs, and desires of people in general. 8th, he moves on his own personal initiative, without being urged to do so. 9th, he assumes full responsibility for his own deeds and depends upon the soundness of his own judgment, in the formation of his plans, having first wisely availed himself of the counsel of others, through the mastermind principle. 10th, he develops and uses both the faculties of synthetic imagination and creative imagination. Take notice, however, that these two factors constitute but 1/10 of the principles used by the man of creative vision. I think this should give you a fair understanding of the difference between imagination and creative vision. Hill. Yes, the difference is clear. It is also very great. I suppose this answers my question as to why there are so few people who appear to use imagination. Carnegie. What you really meant to say was that there are so few people who use creative vision. All normal people use imagination, to one extent or another, but few make use of creative vision. As I have clearly shown, imagination is but one of the factors of creative vision. Industrial America, as we know it today, is the handiwork of men with creative vision. When men with this sort of vision put money to work, they create wealth in its most useful form, wealth in the form of employment, wealth in the form of high standards of living, wealth in the form of education embracing experience and skill in every walk of life. Men with creative vision are builders. They never tear down. They are positive, not negative. They build our great railway systems, they construct our skyscrapers and extend the boundaries of our great metropolitan cities, they gave us the telephone, and the airplane, and the automobile, and the multifarious devices for harnessing and using electricity. They also gave us the most efficient system of government known to the civilized world, under which every American citizen has the privilege of exercising his personal initiative to the fullest extent of his creative vision and his individual ability. When you look under the surface of this thing called creative vision, you find it to be the forerunner of civilization. Back through the ages we may find evidence that civilization has evolved through the leadership of a relatively small number of men. These were men with creative vision whose alertness of mind kept them always ahead of the masses. Such men were Samuel Adams, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, George Washington, Thomas Paine, and the other great patriots of their time who risked life and fortune to give birth to the America we know today. Measure these men by their deeds and see how definitely they used the 10 factors of creative vision which I have mentioned. Hill. What causes men to develop creative vision, Mr. Carnegie? Or, is this an inborn trait with which only a few men are gifted? Carnegie. I can answer your question best by referring you to the basic motives behind all actions. Motive is the mainspring of all human endeavor. Take any man who is known to possess creative vision, analyze him carefully, and you find that he has been spurred on by some impelling motive. The major motive of the men who gave this nation its liberty was the desire for liberty and freedom. The motive of the great industrial leaders who gave us our industrial America was a desire for financial gain, popularly known as the profit motive. In many instances these men were moved by the desire for self-expression, which is another of the basic motives. But always there was present a definite motive which inspired our leaders to action. One of the greatest of the factors of the American way of life is that our entire economic system and our form of government are so designed and operated that they provide premiums and rewards for the expression of personal initiative. The profit motive and personal initiative are inseparable. Under the American way of life the profit motive is the greatest of all the motives which inspire personal initiative. If this motive were killed off, or subdued, the greatest source of our national wealth would be likewise depreciated. I wish to emphasize this point, because I can see a tendency toward habits and practices which discourage men from exercising their personal initiative. Some men have the false notion that by limiting the amount of work one man is permitted to do, new jobs are created. Without going into a detailed analysis of this philosophy, I can tell you that the man who permits anyone to limit the amount of service he renders thereby fixes a definite limitation upon the amount he may earn, and that limitation usually is somewhere in the neighborhood of the bare necessities of life, and no more. Men with creative vision never limit the amount of service they render.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
On the contrary, they extend their services in every direction possible, by going the extra mile. There is no other way by which a man can make the fullest use of his privilege of personal initiative. To get more from life one must give more. This is a truism from which no man can escape. Nature fixed it in all natural laws, therefore it is not a man-made rule. Hill. Then it would be unfortunate if our form of government were so changed that it would discourage people of the United States from embracing and acting upon this law. Carnegie. Not merely unfortunate, but tragic. If you examine the foundation stones of Americanism carefully, you will see that the entire American way of life provides every individual with adequate rewards for embracing and using the best motives. Nowhere in the economic setup will you find anything that discourages men from backing their personal initiative with these motives. And I may add that our present high standard of living is due entirely to the fact that the American form of government has been so designed that it encourages individuals to use these motives. Hill. Do you believe, Mr. Carnegie, that the American way of life, as it has been provided under our form of government, is responsible for the fact that this nation is distinguished throughout the world because of the great number of men with creative vision of whom we can boast? Carnegie. You have hit the nail right on the head by that question. Yes, without a doubt the supremacy of American industry and our leadership in other directions are due to the encouragement provided by our form of government. Read the Constitution of the United States carefully and observe, with significance, how clearly it has provided for the protection of the right of free enterprise and the privilege of personal initiative. Now examine, carefully, the elements of creative vision and note how all of these lead, inevitably, to the question of personal initiative. Take that privilege away from a man, or limit it in any manner, and you strike at the very heart of the greatest privilege that is available to the American people. It has been the personal initiative of the great leaders that has made America the envy of the rest of the world. From this conclusion there is no escape, try as we may to avoid it. Hill. I understand that you encourage the members of your mastermind group to become wealthy. Your policy of overpaying your associates for going the extra mile was your method of encouraging personal initiative. Is that the idea? Carnegie. That's the idea precisely. There is only one satisfactory way to get men to do their best, and that is by setting up before them a motive which is sufficiently attractive to inspire them to act on their own initiative. The nature and scope of the motive must be measured by the potential ability and the personal characteristics of the man whom it is intended to inspire. This is usually determined by an individual's ambitions and personal limitations. Some men aspire only to acquire economic security. Still others are self-limited by a desire for only the necessities of life. Others want great riches, and they can be moved by no other motive than that of abundance. However, I must tell you that of all the thousands of associate workers who have been connected with my industry, less than 50 of them were motivated by the desire for great riches. I helped more than 40 of these to attain the object of their desires by becoming millionaires or better. 8 or 10 others had the desire for great riches, but they fell short of attaining their desire because they neglected to apply the rules of individual achievement which would have entitled them to attain it. I think it may be interesting to know that most of those who fell by the wayside, after they had gone a long distance toward the attainment of their desire, did so because they became neglectful of the principle of going the extra mile. Success had the reverse effect on them to that which it should have had. It caused them to begin thinking they should be paid for what they knew instead of that which they did, or induced others to do. This is a mistake which is fatal to many who make a good start toward success, but slow down when they come within sight of it. Hill. Mr. Carnegie, aren't there some employers who set arbitrary limitations on the amount of money they will permit their associate workers to make? Carnegie. Yes, there are many such, but name me one of them, if you can, who has ever become an outstanding success in his field. Success is something which a man has to give away in order to keep it. The man who helps the greatest number of others to succeed is, himself, the greatest success. It has been so since the dawn of civilization. It will always be so. The founders of this nation recognized this truth and wrote it into the Constitution of the United States, by providing every citizen with the utmost of personal privileges that could be conceived, with the object of inspiring individuals to aim high and acquire much. Hill. Would you say that the men who wrote the Constitution of the United States were men of creative vision? Carnegie. Yes, and they were the most outstanding men in this respect that this nation or any other has ever known. Without creative vision they could not have had the foresight and the wisdom to prepare a constitution that gives equal rights to all men. Those men were statesmen in the true sense of the word. Today we have many politicians, but few statesmen. Hill. What has happened, Mr. Carnegie, that has brought about the shortage of great statesmen, such as those who gave birth to this nation? Carnegie. I'll tell you what has happened. This country has become so rich and prosperous, and personal liberty and freedom have become so cheap, that men are no longer motivated by the desire for personal freedom, as were the statesmen of the past. Hill. In other words, our overabundance has made us indolent and indifferent. Is that the idea? Carnegie. Yes, it has become so easy for a man to get everything he wants in this country that the pioneering spirit and the will for self-determination have been weakened. There is danger associated with unearned gifts. The gifts of personal liberty and the right to free enterprise, which were provided by the founders of this nation, have come so easily that the people have begun to mistake their privileges for their license to expect something for nothing. Hill. From your remarks I draw the conclusion that Uncle Sam's gift of overabundance, in the form of personal liberty as provided by the Constitution of the United States, sometimes produces the effect of causing his nieces and nephews to look to rich old uncle for what they want instead of producing it for themselves, by rendering useful service. Is that about the story? Carnegie. That's the story exactly. Of course this trend will right itself in time, but not until the country is overtaken by some great national emergency that will teach the people the fallacy of expecting something for nothing. This may come in the form of a widespread depression, or it may come in the form of a war in which the people will be forced to join forces and fight once more for the privilege of liberty that was given to them when this nation was born. But come what may, there is one thing certain: people cannot go on forever cutting down the amount of service they render and demanding more pay, without catastrophe overtaking them. Hill. Then you do not think there is anything wrong with the American system of economics, but there is something radically wrong with the people who are living under it? Is that your viewpoint, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie. That is not merely my viewpoint, but it is the truth. It is little wonder that we have such a comparatively few men with creative vision, in view of the overwhelming number of people who are violating every rule of creative vision. There is nothing wrong with our system of government, or our economic system, but there is definitely something wrong in the use we are making of these privileges. Hill. Mr. Carnegie, you are the recognized leader in the steel industry. Your achievements in this industry have so far outstripped all others that there is no room for comparison. You have reduced the price of steel from $130 per ton to around $20 per ton. You have made the steel industry the very backbone of American industry. Now, will you tell me how you happen to advance so far ahead of all others engaged in that industry? Carnegie. You have the answer to that question in the 10 factors of creative vision which I have mentioned. Hill. Do you mean that you have observed and applied these principles while some of the others engaged in the steel industry have not? Carnegie. Oh, I would not put it just that way. I would rather say that I have applied these principles more persistently than have many of the others. The difference between my achievements and the achievements of others in the steel industry has been due largely to the difference in the application of principles. Hill. Then you do not claim to have greater ability than the others, just a greater capacity for the application of sound principles. Is that the idea? Carnegie. Yes, that is it. And I may add that this same difference, in the matter of application of principles, is the major difference between those who succeed and those who fail in other walks of life. The principles of successful achievement are as definite as are the rules of mathematics. Some men acquire an understanding of these rules and apply them persistently. Others may understand them, but they apply them with less persistence. Naturally, the more persistent a man is, the greater is the success. Hill. Mr. Carnegie, I have always been interested in understanding more about the transition by which one changes from poverty to riches. Practically every man of great wealth in the United States appears to have started at scratch, with nothing but a sound mind and an opportunity such as every man has, under the American way of life. Now, what I would like to know is this: what is the first move a man makes when he is through with poverty and has become determined he will have riches? Where is the precise point at which the transition from poverty takes place, and how may one reach that point? Carnegie. Your questions cover enough ground to keep me busy talking for a solid month, but I will do my best to answer. To begin with, let me answer you categorically by reminding you that it is the burden of the entire philosophy of individual achievement to provide the answer to all your questions. However, I will be more specific and give you at least a starting point from which you may arrive at your own answers. In the first place, a man must have the necessary creative vision to enable him to recognize the particular opportunity for which he is best suited, considering the amount of riches he desires and the kind of service he has to offer in return for the riches. That surely is the first thing to be considered. Next, it is a well-known fact that everyone wishes for riches, but generally the wishes contemplate something for nothing, or something greater than the value of that which is to be given in return for it. The second step, then, is to kill off this fallacy by recognizing the truth that there is no such reality as something for nothing, or something for less than its true value. Hill. I see, by the way you are starting off, that the question of change from poverty to riches is one of organized preparation. Is that what you are driving at, Mr. Carnegie? Carnegie. Now you have the idea, exactly. Riches do not come from wishing. They come from a more substantial source, the nature of which I shall try to make clear. And I may as well add there are no known shortcuts to riches. While the road to riches is well marked, it is rather long, and at places the going is a bit hard. These hard spots claim millions of victims who begin the journey, mainly because when the going becomes hard most people give up and turn back or drop out of the race entirely. Now, let us get on with my answer to your questions. The man who prepares himself to change from poverty to riches is something like the farmer who wishes to convert a forest into a productive field. He first clears away the timber and debris. Then he plows the ground and conditions the soil. After that he plants the seed. But all these steps have to be taken intelligently, and at the right season of the year, or no crop will be realized. It is precisely the same procedure with the man who makes up his mind to be done with poverty. He must first clear his mind of all negatives and self-imposed limitations. Then he must take inventory of his education, experience, natural aptitudes, and general ability, to see what he has to offer. After this he must look for a market for whatever service he is capable of rendering. Here enters one of the more important of the principles of individual achievement, the principle of going the extra mile. I have never heard of anyone changing from poverty to riches without applying this principle, and doing it as a matter of habit. Up to this point the preparation has consisted, mainly, of the clearing away of the obstacles that stand between men and success. The next step is that of making oneself success conscious. Riches have a way of gravitating toward the man who has made up his mind to have them. Indolence, indifference, self-imposed limitations, fear, and discouragement will never attract riches. After a man has attracted favorable attention to himself, by the habit of going the extra mile, he is then in a position to adopt a definite major purpose and to begin expressing it in action, through a definite plan. His major purpose naturally will be based upon the sort of service he has for sale. From this point on he applies the principles of individual achievement in whatever combinations, and under whatever circumstances, his major purpose requires. But, mind you, he does not quit when the going becomes hard. If he has properly charged his mind with success consciousness, he will not want to quit. This preparation is an absolute essential for the acquisition of riches. Here let me offer the warning that the man whose only object is to acquire riches will more than likely meet with disappointment. The best of all mental attitudes in which to begin the transition from poverty to riches is that in which a man centers his thoughts more upon the service he renders than upon the riches he is seeking. Riches which are sought merely for the sake of the riches alone have many forms of evasiveness by which they avoid capture.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Alas, I fear there are too few who recognize this truth. I sincerely believe that the best way for a man to accumulate riches is by making himself indispensable, through some form of useful service. All my experience confirms this. All that I have learned from the experiences of other men supports this thought. Hill. Then it is not possible for a man to accumulate riches by shortcuts or by joining with others who, by the force of numbers, demand more than the value of the services they render. Carnegie. Oh, yes, men can and do sometimes take shortcuts to riches, but their chances of success are so remote that this method is highly hazardous. Not infrequently does it lead to prison, and sometimes to a worse fate. Those who get by, and the number is comparatively small, find that their gains are not permanent. They have a way of melting like the snow under a blazing sun. Ill-gotten gain is always a bad bargain. Men who gain some temporary advantage by the sheer force of numbers may demand and receive, for a time, more than the fair value of their services, but they are like the man who killed the goose that laid the golden egg. The market for their services plays out, sometimes because the purchaser becomes bankrupt, sometimes because he flatly refuses to be cheated. Cheating, no matter in what form or under what disguise it is carried on, comes back on the cheater like a boomerang, to embarrass him. That is why the applied golden rule is, of necessity, one of the principles of individual achievement. All this may sound like a preachment, but remember that it is also sound philosophy. It is the sum and the substance of the experiences of men who have tried all methods of accumulating riches. Fortunate, indeed, will be the man who accepts it as sound without having to learn this truth from trying its opposite. Hill. What is the most important requirement of men who aspire to accumulate riches, providing you can boil the answer down to one thing that is more important than all others? Carnegie. I can do that easily. The most important thing is ability to negotiate with others with a minimum of friction, so as to gain a maximum of friendly cooperation. This is simply another way of saying the most important thing in life is human relationships. All success and all failure are the result of human relationships. The man who learns how to negotiate with others so as to gain their confidence and friendly cooperation has gone 9/10 of the way toward success. From there on the journey will be both definite and comparatively easy. In this attainment the golden rule and the principle of the extra mile are vitally important. Hill. Do you know of any sound argument against any principle described in this philosophy? Carnegie. Now, if you hadn't included that word, sound, in your question, I would have been compelled to answer in the affirmative, but, answering your question just as you stated it, I am compelled to say no. The only argument anyone is apt to raise, in connection with the philosophy, is that which may be raised by those who want something for nothing, or those who would like to find fault with men who have succeeded, because of envy. I might include, also, those who would like to destroy the American way of life. With these exceptions you will find no one who can or will be likely to try to question the soundness of this philosophy. As a matter of fact it is so obviously sound that it defies challenge by all except those whom I have mentioned. Hill. Now let us go back to your definition of creative vision, Mr. Carnegie. I wish to make sure that I understand the full meaning of this principle, and I also wish the fullest understanding of its application in the practical affairs of daily life. Therefore, will you analyze this principle more fully? Carnegie. Inasmuch as I have already described what the principle is, and what one may accomplish by its application, perhaps it would be well if I now tell you what it is not. I can think of no better illustration of the lack of creative vision than that exemplified by an acquaintance of mine who was asked to invest $5,000 in Henry Ford's automobile industry at the beginning, when Mr. Ford was badly in need of working capital. This man had the money, and he wanted to invest it. He consulted me about the possibilities of an investment in the Ford industry, and I strongly urged him to go ahead and put his money in. Several months later I asked him if he had followed my advice, and he said he had not. In the first place, said he, this automobile is a new fad and it will soon play out. Now, that was mistake number one, which showed his lack of vision. And in the second place, he exclaimed, I don't believe this man Ford knows what he is about. That was mistake number two, which showed that he lacked vision. And in the third place, he wailed, if I put my money in that business I have no security for it, because the business has nothing but an idea. That was mistake number three, which showed his lack of vision, because men of vision recognize sound ideas as being among the safest and the most valuable of all assets. About the same time that my acquaintance had an opportunity to invest his money with Henry Ford, another man by the name of James Couzens came along with $5,000 plus a keen sense of creative imagination. He not only invested his money in the Ford enterprise, but gave the business his personal services as well. He is still with the business, and while I do not know how much his interest in the business is worth, it would be my guess that it is no less than 20 times his original investment if not much more. You see, James Couzens understood the value of ideas. He also saw a future in the automobile business, and of course I hardly need to mention that he saw that Henry Ford knew what he was about. Author's note, many years after this statement by Andrew Carnegie, James Couzens left the Ford business, and I have heard from reliable sources that he realized $12 million from his interest in the business, not to mention the amounts he received from salary in his investment, while he was in the business. Hill. Going back, for the moment, to your story of Dr. Harper, of the University of Chicago. Would you say that he applied all 10 of the principles of creative vision? Carnegie. Well, you analyze the cleverness with which he managed to procure $1 million endowment in a fraction of an hour from a man whom he had never met before, and you will have your answer. However, I knew Dr. Harper quite well. Therefore I am in a position to tell you definitely that he made it his business to apply the principles of creative vision in practically everything he did. He was known far and near as the ablest money raiser in the educational field. Now let me cite you another example of a man who had creative vision plus. His name is Hugh Chalmers, who is now the head of a large automobile plant in Detroit. When Mr. Chalmers was the general sales manager of the National Cash Register Company, his company became embroiled in a controversy with its competitors which brought it near the brink of failure. Business was falling off at an alarming rate. The salesmen in the field were sending pessimistic reports of their inability to procure business, although Mr. Chalmers knew well enough that there was plenty of business to be had. Being a man of creative vision, he diagnosed the case, determined the cause of the decline in business, and laid a plan to remedy the evil. If you will observe men who have creative vision, you will learn that they do not quit when the going becomes hard. Instead, they generally put on more steam and gird themselves for battle, no matter what the difficulty may be. Well, Mr. Chalmers was like that. Having formulated a definite plan for the solution of his problem, Mr. Chalmers telegraphed every salesman in the field to report at the general office, in Dayton, Ohio, for a conference. After they had arrived, he called a meeting in the company auditorium. The meeting was called to order. Then Mr. Chalmers arose and addressed the salesmen as follows. "Gentlemen, I suppose you are wondering why we sent you a hurry-up call to come in. Well, I'll come straight to the point and satisfy your curiosity. For several months you have been bombarding me with all sorts of pessimistic excuses for your failure to send in orders. Some of you give one excuse for the decline in orders, and some of you give another, but there is one thing on which you all seem to agree, and that is the fact that something is wrong in the field which makes it difficult for you to procure orders. Now I am going to tell you what the real trouble is. Our competitors have circulated the report that we are about to fail, and you gentlemen have picked up the backwash of that report and built it into a fear complex. There is plenty of business in the field, but you have sold yourself a bill of fear instead of selling national cash registers. I can tell you, here and now, that unless you throw off that fear and go back to work you will have something real to fear, because all of you will be looking for new jobs. This is my analysis of the case, but I am not going to force it on you without giving you an opportunity to speak for yourselves. You go ahead, now, and tell me, in your own words, what you think the trouble is." Having thus frankly stated his case, Chalmers then opened the meeting for a free discussion in which every salesman present was invited to participate. The first man arose and began to unburden himself. "I can't speak for the other salesmen," he began, "but I can speak for myself.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
All I know is that something has happened which has taken away my courage. Moreover, I find all the merchants hostile to our company the moment I announce my business and connection. In addition to this, the crops have been a failure in my territory and I don't think the merchants would buy cash registers, not even if they liked our company." With that little bit of expressed pessimism, the salesman sat down. Then another arose and began to relieve himself of his burdens. "I can endorse everything that has just been said," he began, "and I can go much stronger. Why, do you know that in my territory, which is cattle country, the price of cattle has declined until it has disturbed the whole community? Also, this is a presidential election year and everyone is waiting to see who is going to win before buying anything. And, in addition to this..." He got no further with his remarks. At this point Hugh Chalmers jumped upon the top of a table, held up his hands for silence, and exclaimed, "I want someone to get up and tell me what is right about his territory. Get your minds off what you think is wrong, for the moment, and go right ahead and give me some encouraging news. I know you can if you will be honest and tell the truth, even though you have to make embarrassing admissions to do it. The next salesman arose, and this is what he said. Mr. Chalmers, I see the point exactly. I, too, came in here prepared to spill an earful of excuses, but the truth is I have not been working in the right mental attitude. I cannot speak for anyone but myself, but I can promise you this, I am going back into my territory and guarantee to send in orders instead of excuses. He sat down, and the next man sprang to his feet. Said he. Yes, and I can go the last speaker one better. I'm going back to my territory in a different spirit, and I'll guarantee to send in double the amount of business I have ever produced from that territory in the past. As he sat down, another man jumped up and exclaimed. Me, too, and I wish to say that I think we should all apologize for the trouble we have caused you by having to call us in here for this much-deserved spanking. I'm going back with a firm determination to double my business. If I fail, you may consider my resignation. Then one after another arose and made similar speeches. 2 hours later the meeting broke up, and the men began starting for their territories. The following month the company's business increased to double the amount of any previous months. And I have heard it said that this dramatic procedure of a man with creative vision saved the National Cash Register Company from financial disaster. Thus the story goes, wherever you find a man with creative vision. These fellows know no such word as impossible. They convert stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Like Luther Burbank, they make 2 blades of grass grow where one grew before. Men of vision dam great rivers and warm the hearts of a happy citizenry who can read their favorite books after working hours with illumination as ample as the noonday sun. They press a button at sundown and lo! The sun rises again. In like manner, pioneer minds touch a spring on a machine and it begins to talk. These pioneers spread a network of railroads across a desert, and the land yields golden grain sufficient to feed the nation. They tinker with a few wheels and odd pieces of metal, and convert them into a horseless buggy that runs under its own power. They place a few pieces of tin in a small receiver, connect electric power to it, and lo! It carries the sound of the human voice across the continent. Accordingly, friends in distant cities converse as neighbors do. They build telegraph and cable lines across oceans and continents, and business between the far corners of the earth is transacted in a few moments for the service of customers throughout a troubled world. They build transportation facilities and great retail stores, and the world's markets are brought to the front door of every man. Men of vision send an army of workers to Panama, guide their labor, and cut 2 continents in half, thus saving thousands of miles and millions of dollars for shipping. These men of vision rig up a few pieces of bamboo, cover them with cloth, attach a small gasoline engine for power, and the thing takes to the air like a bird. Likewise, men with ideas begin with $18 worth of watches, offer them for sale to a few friends, and evolve from that humble beginning America's largest mail-order house. Similarly, forward-looking men fearlessly sign their names to a document which they know full well may become their death warrant, and by their courage, they give liberty and freedom to the world's greatest nation. These great spirits place their pen to a proclamation, sign their name, and give freedom to an enslaved race. Men of vision insert a piece of glass into a small tube, turn it toward the heavens, and reveal worlds the human eye had never seen before. They embark upon an uncharted ocean, in frail sailing vessels little more seaworthy than a rowboat, and keep on until they discover a new world. They harness the waves of the ocean and convert their power into electrical energy that turns the wheels of industry. They write an essay called Compensation and reveal to the whole world the impossibility of trying to get something for nothing. Forward-looking men fill bottles with a pleasing, brown-colored drink, name it Coca-Cola, cheer millions of hearts, and quench the thirst of the world, to say nothing of piling up fortunes for those who distribute the drink. Other men of vision preach a simple precept known as the Sermon on the Mount and set the whole world an example in human relationship worthy of emulation. They foretell the future by looking backward into the past. Men with ideas write books that lift their fellows out of the depths of despair and give them a new start in life. Pioneer minds combine the metals of the earth into alloys that resist rust and serve man in 1,000 useful ways. They span the widest rivers with bridges that hang from steel wires. In fact, these men of creative vision provide the humblest citizen in America with luxuries which kings and potentates of bygone ages never knew. Verily, there is nothing impossible for the man with creative vision. He is the forerunner of civilization, the inspirer of individual initiative, the protector of human freedom. So the story goes, on and on, ad infinitum. Wherever men with creative vision are found, one also finds progress, prosperity, and high standards of living. You wanted to know more about the principle of creative vision? Very well, look wherever you find a prosperous business, and you will come upon some individual who has this ability. It may be a man hidden in the background. He may be one of whom the public hears little or nothing, but he will be there just the same. He has to be, or else there would be no successful business. And I can tell you something else that all the people of the United States ought to know. When we stop encouraging men to use creative vision, we may as well close up American industry and go home, provided we have any homes to go to. Men of creative vision are responsible for every factory, and for every job in every factory. They are also responsible for the American way of life as we know it today. Hill. From your analysis of creative vision, I conclude that you believe this faculty, generally speaking, is developed as the result of some definite motive which stimulates the imagination to obsessional proportions. Carnegie. That's the idea in a nutshell. But there is something else I wish to say concerning this question of motive, and it is this: instead of rewarding men of creative vision with epithets and brickbats, they should be rewarded with appropriate honorariums appropriated from the public funds, not as a means of paying them for their services, but as an acknowledgement of the benefits they bring to mankind. The United States government should set up annual awards, to be given as honorariums to those who, in each field of industry, make the greatest contribution to industry as a whole and to the general welfare through their creative vision. The same plan should be followed with reference to the professions, and trades, and business, and finance. The honorarium should be substantial, on the order of the Nobel system of annual awards for outstanding achievements. Surely, the richest and the freest country of the world is big enough and far-sighted enough to recognize, appropriately, those who, by their creative vision, have made and maintained the American way of life for the benefit of all the people. I found the award system highly profitable in the steel industry, so very profitable, in fact, that my annual award to some of the leaders who worked with me amounted to over $1 million. Now, this is my idea of how to go about developing creative vision, not by using it as a shining mark at which men with radical tendencies are encouraged to shoot, but setting it up as a goal for which all men are encouraged to strive. Individuals who are really smart will, of course, recognize the soundness of this suggestion, and adopt it for their own self-promotion. Those who are really smart have always done this. The employer who overlooks the possibilities of such a system of recognition for outstanding achievements among his associate workers is something like the ostrich that sticks its head in the sand when danger threatens. Hill. Your suggestion seems quite sound, Mr. Carnegie.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
The best evidence of its soundness is the fact that you have made it provide you with a huge fortune. Carnegie. Yes, if you mean by the word fortune the knowledge I have gained from my relationships with men. The money I have accumulated is but a minor fraction of my real riches. Evidence of this may be found in the fact that I am giving my money away as fast as I can do so safely. The better portion of my riches consists of the knowledge which I am giving to the people through your cooperation. When your job will have been finished, the people of America, and perhaps the people of the entire world, will recognize the truth that creative vision is the advance guard of civilization, the foundation of all human progress, the major source of all riches. I want the people to become wealthy, but my own experience teaches me that the greatest of all forms of wealth is practical wisdom, through which men learn, once and for all time, that there is no such reality as something for nothing. That everything has its price, and the whole of the universe is so arranged that this price must be paid, that material riches, the same as all other forms of riches, are the result of personal initiative expressed through the principle of going the extra mile. The people of the United States are in need of a new philosophy. If they do not get it, the future of this nation is doomed to failure. No nation can thrive and grow without the leadership of men with creative vision. The people of this country are discouraging the development of this quality, they are placing penalties on personal initiative, they are forming themselves into groups and blocks which seek something for nothing, they are encouraging men to substitute crooked politics for profound statesmanship. They are permitting unscrupulous men to infiltrate themselves into public office and loot the public treasuries by their failure to exercise their right of franchise. They are substituting personal greed for public service. They are substituting Karl Marx for Thomas Jefferson and other great men of creative vision who gave them their privilege of free enterprise and personal initiative. They are supplanting the church with the politically controlled saloon. By recognizing these signs of the times, I can foretell what is going to happen to the richest and the freest nation of the world if the people do not undergo a renaissance that will lead them back to a recognition of the principles of human relationship which have been responsible for the foundation stones of Americanism. I can read the future by looking backward to the days of the Roman Empire, when the people destroyed themselves through the same weaknesses in which the people of the United States are now indulging. I do not need to be a prophet to foretell the future of the United States. I need only to read the history of the past, and to understand that history has a way of repeating itself. Hill. Mr. Carnegie, do you believe the people of the United States will have the common sense to recognize a sound philosophy of individual achievement when it is presented to them? Carnegie. If I didn't think so, I would not be spending my time coaching you to provide them with such a philosophy. Yes, I do believe the people of the United States have the capacity for an awakening. Of course there will be no sweeping revival of sound thinking, but you will find a few men in almost every industry and every calling who will be smart enough to recognize and embrace the philosophy as a means of self-promotion. Through their example of successful application of the philosophy, it will catch the attention of others and spread, just as Christianity began, in the minds of a mere handful of men, and gradually spread until it is the greatest influence of civilization. Keep this one truth in mind: sound principles, which obviously are of benefit to individuals for their self-promotion, will be recognized and appropriated whenever and wherever they are laid down by the side of unsound principles. Truth will stand out by the side of falsehood, like the shining sun in front of a blue background of space, wherever the two are placed side by side. I believe the people of the United States will recognize and appropriate the philosophy of individual achievement because I know it to be sound. Mark these words and remember what I have said: wherever you find a man who recognizes the worth of this philosophy, you will find, also, a man who has the inherent capacity for creative vision. Watch that man closely, and you will see him throw off the spirit of defeatism and take on a new lease of personal initiative. His imagination will become more alert. He will blossom out in unmistakable contrast with his associate workers. His friends will notice the change that has come over him, and they will speak of it. He will go ahead in his chosen calling, by leaps and bounds. His success will inspire others to inquire into its source. In this way will the philosophy of individual achievement gain a foothold and spread. Author's note: experience with many thousands of people who have acquired a knowledge of this philosophy has provided unavoidable evidence of the soundness of Andrew Carnegie's prophecy as to the manner in which it would spread on its own merits.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Already the philosophy has gained a foothold throughout the United States. It has been translated into the Portuguese language, for widespread distribution in Brazil. A special edition of it has been published in Australia, for distribution throughout the British Empire, and it has been translated into the major dialects of India, for special distribution throughout India. Negotiations are underway for its translation into the Spanish language, for distribution in all the Latin American countries. It has already been adopted in the public schools of the Philippine Islands and in many schools in the United States. Thus may one observe with what a keen sense of understanding did Andrew Carnegie prophesy that the philosophy might well become a leavening force in a troubled world. Hill. How long do you think it will require, Mr. Carnegie, to so popularize the philosophy in the United States that it will become the substitute for the radical philosophies which are now undermining the foundation stones of Americanism? Carnegie. No one could answer that question with any degree of certainty, but I can tell you this. The time required will be much shorter than the time you will have to spend in organizing the philosophy. As I have already stated, you will have to spend no less than 20 years of research before the philosophy will be ready for widespread distribution. After your work is finished there will be a period of seeming indifference toward your work, just as there has been a similar period of indifference toward the achievements of all men who have been in advance of their time. If the country should be overtaken by some great catastrophe, such as a nationwide depression, or a war that will upset the economic condition of the people, your big opportunity will come on the heels of that catastrophe, for the people will have learned that everyone must have sound rules by which to relate himself to others. Author's note: again we have evidence, in abundance, of Mr. Carnegie's ability to foretell the future by looking into the past. This philosophy was begun in 1908 and completed and published, for the first time, in 1928, exactly 20 years in the making. Then came the nationwide depression which lasted many years. Already the demand for this philosophy has become so definite that it has been published in my book Think and Grow Rich, and now in 17 mental dynamite lessons in a form which makes it of immediate use to all who have personal problems growing out of the disturbing condition of the world. Wherever you find a prosperous business, you will come upon some individual who has creative vision. When you pray do not ask for more blessings, but ask for more wisdom, that you may better understand and enjoy the blessings you already have. Edison had the persistence to keep on trying in the face of 10,000 failures. Andrew Carnegie. The mind within itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. John Milton. Wisdom adorns riches and softens poverty. Socrates. How to Own Your Own Mind by Napoleon Hill. Analysis of Chapter 1, Creative Vision, by Napoleon Hill. Mr. Carnegie has covered the subject of creative vision so completely that further analysis of the subject seems unnecessary. However, I shall briefly summarize the highlights of his analysis. 1. He clearly emphasized the difference between imagination and creative vision, by showing that one deals largely with localized circumstances while the other contemplates every factor which concerns an individual in his relationship with others. 2. he graphically presented examples describing both imagination and creative vision in connection with their practical application in the affairs of everyday life, thus revealing the technique through which successful men have applied these principles. 3. He emphasized the importance of the basic motives as the source of all personal initiative and also the source of stimulation of imagination and creative vision. 4. He specifically named the 10 major characteristics of men who understand and apply the principle of creative vision. 5. He appropriately called attention to the fact that creative vision has been responsible for all human progress, in all ages and all countries. 6. He called attention, again and again, to the futility of the common practice of trying to get something for nothing. 7. He made an analysis of the future of America, based on the common tendency to demand something for nothing, which should be impressed upon the mind of every citizen of this country, and must be heeded by all who expect to acquire riches in the future. 8. He called attention to the importance of acquiring the ability to recognize and to embrace opportunities favorable for self-promotion, and significantly mentioned that only those who become thus alert may hope to attain noteworthy success in any calling. 9. He gave a fine description of the procedure one must follow in connection with the transition from poverty to riches. 10. He emphasized the necessities of going the extra mile, and appropriately mentioned the fact that he had never known of anyone attaining any station above mediocrity without following this habit. 11. He described human relationships as the most important thing to be considered by those who aspire to noteworthy success in any calling. 12. Last, but not least in importance, he recommended that the people of the United States stop throwing brickbats at men with creative vision and start emulating them instead. I come, now, to my own analysis of creative vision. It is based on the requirements of this changing world in which we live. Mr. Carnegie's analysis of this subject was made over 30 years ago. Since then the whole of civilization has undergone and continues to undergo shocking changes which have made creative vision not only desirable, but absolutely necessary. As I interpret the nature of the changes which are taking place in the United States today, there is one danger threatening every American citizen which outshadows all others. It is the growing tendency to stand still, without protest, while one after another of the rights of free enterprise are, by one pretense or another, being removed. As Mr. Carnegie has so appropriately mentioned, the greatest of all the privileges enjoyed by the American people is that of the right to exercise personal initiative without molestation. He called attention, time after time, to the fact that personal initiative is the basis of all achievements. Out of the richness of his own personal career he drew picture after picture of circumstances through which men had succeeded by acting on their own initiative. Creative vision will be of little use to the man who is forced, either by law or by arbitrary regulatory rules, to limit the amount of service he renders. It has been known, since the dawn of civilization, that the service a man renders is cause and the pay he receives is effect, and that the latter is measured with precise relationship to the quality and the quantity of the former. Just as a little fire produces a small amount of heat, and a large amount of fire produces a greater amount of heat, so does a poor quality and quantity of service produce poor pay, and fine quality and quantity of service produce a satisfactory amount of pay. From this conclusion there is no escape. A long while ago a great philosopher said, "The greatest evil of all people is that of refusing to face facts." The time has come when we all need to face facts and to recognize them for what they are. The United States still is the land of opulence and opportunity. We still have the foundation stones of Americanism intact, though they are being attacked and undermined from many angles. We still have the right in this country to choose our own occupation, although some of us have been deprived of the privilege of making the most of this right. We still have the right to vote and to elect to public office the men of our choice, although we have so abused this privilege by our failure to vote that it, too, has lost many of its benefits. We may still belong to any church we please, and worship according to the dictates of our own belief, but through our indifference to the benefits of the church we have forced it into a steady decline in its influence for good. We still have men with creative vision as the leaders of American industry, the backbone of our entire economic system, but we are showing our ingratitude by rewarding them with epithets and abuses. We still have all the operating capital that is needed to carry on the vast industries of America, but we have shown such hostility to those who have risked their capital that they have become shy and suspicious to the point of refusing to invest their money. Surely this sort of indifference does not encourage the development of the creative vision that this country must have in order to remain the world's richest and freest nation. These are only a few of the evils which assail us. Let us face the facts and turn an about-face before we lose the privileges of which we have so long boasted. As Mr. Carnegie has so appropriately mentioned, all individual initiative is based on motive. Let me see, therefore, what motive we can find that will justify the readers of this chapter in developing and using creative vision. Suggested fields of opportunity for the application of creative vision. Ideas are the beginning of all achievements. They are the seedlings of all progress. As a starter, let me mention a few ideas which I consider worthy of analysis and thought. 1. There is a great need for a series of newspaper comic strips that will educate as well as entertain. Up to the present time this need has been supplied, for the most part, by subject matter which is lacking in educational value. The comics are the great national pastime for children. Therefore they provide an unparalleled opportunity for men and women with ability to combine entertainment with education, plus the ability to do freehand drawing.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today's actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Those who cannot draw pictures but have sound ideas might take advantage of this opportunity by forming a mastermind alliance with those who can. 2. In the field of radio there is a similar opportunity for the introduction of radio programs which educate as well as entertain. Here, as in connection with the comic strips, much of the program material is in need of elevation. Surely there is enough creative vision in the United States to save radio, perhaps the greatest of recent discoveries, from disintegration through the inferiority of its programs. 3. There is a crying need for storybooks for children which will educate as well as entertain. The creative vision which rescues the comics and the radio might well be turned to the production of books for children through which they may acquire useful knowledge as well as find entertainment. A recent examination of the available storybooks for children disclosed the astounding fact that this field is particularly lacking in books of the nature here described, and one prominent publisher of children's books enthusiastically expressed his hope that someone would provide him with the material for such books. Here, then, is an open opportunity for some clever man or woman who understands how to cater to children through pictures and stories. 4. Some person who has yet found no outlet for his creative vision may make himself wealthy by inventing a method of adding to the services, and to the sources of revenue, of gasoline filling stations which are to be found on the most prominent corners throughout America. These filling stations have extra parking space for automobiles, therefore they are excellently located for the distribution of almost any sort of merchandise that people use. The man who finds a way to make use of this available opportunity will not only confer a lasting favor on those filling station operators who are barely making a living, and some of them are not doing that well, but he will find himself in possession of a veritable gold mine. 5. There is a crying demand for creative vision in connection with the perfecting of safety devices to lower the hazards of automobile traffic. The high death rate from automobile accidents, over 36,000 annually, has created a need for a system of highways so designed as to lessen the chances of accidents. Perhaps this is an opportunity more suited to engineers than to laymen, but the person who creates any type of safety device, either for automobiles or in connection with the construction of highways, which will lower the percentage of automobile accidents, will find a ready outlet for his talents. A signal system such as is used by the railroads may offer one approach to the partial solution of this problem. But the chances are that a road which is so constructed as to keep automobiles at a safe distance from one another when passing, and at road intersections, may come nearer serving the purpose. There is also a great opportunity for the man who perfects a better type of material for road building, something that will not contract and expand with the change of weather conditions, with a surface that will prevent skidding in wet weather. Perhaps this is a field for the man with a knowledge of chemistry. It may be that a new type of brick, much larger and heavier than the ordinary building brick, and so constructed that the bricks are interlocking when laid, will serve the purpose. Some such brick might be manufactured from the waste from woodworking plants and sawmills, perhaps by mixing the waste wood with a composition that will resist water. When such a brick is perfected, it may also become popular for house construction as well. 6. The millions of cubic feet of unused seating space in the automobiles that travel the public highways daily might be put to some practical use that would go a long way toward paying for the cost of operation of the automobiles. Someone who has creative vision may organize this wasted space into a new type of small package or express service that will become popular as well as profitable to all concerned. 7. The educational system of America could stand modification in the direction of some sort of improvement that would inject more dynamic human interest and more substantial entertainment into education, thereby discouraging the popular game known as hooky. Here is a great field for men and women with an understanding of pedagogy, plus a knowledge of the characteristics of the human mind which can be reached only by entertainment. The person who wishes to use creative vision in this field may also find a way of projecting his ideas into the field of radio, through some sort of school of the air, that will combine education and entertainment. The idea may be extended, also, to the talking picture field where education has already found an outlet but lacks the right sort of a system to make it universally effective. 8. In the field of toys there is, and there always will be, a demand for new and novel ideas that will appeal to children. Here, too, education might be combined with entertainment. 9. There is also a growing need for constructive modification of the orthodox methods of church management which challenges men and women with creative vision.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
The churches need supplementary services in two directions. First, a system through which religion can be made more interesting, thus ensuring against empty pews. And second, some form of service through which the churches may help to solve the daily problems of life more effectively as well as attend to the spiritual requirements of their parishioners. The clergyman who contributes to the solution of these problems will make religion more usable and understandable, to say nothing of having the privilege of preaching to larger audiences. The need is so great and the opportunity so obvious that it should challenge the ablest in the clergy. Only a great religious renaissance can save the world from its own follies. But, let it be remembered by all who may wish to try their hand in this field, that any improvements that prove effective will have to be along the line of practical service aimed at helping people to live, not a service that overemphasizes the fear of death. Words alone will not suffice. What is needed is deeds. This old world is economically ill, and the illness affects every living person. Here, then, is an opportunity for the churches to intensify their influence by rendering more effective human service. The program should have available to all who use it the services of a mastermind group made up of skillful and experienced businessmen, bankers, lawyers, doctors, and others of community influence who are capable of assisting people in the solution of their daily problems. Such a group may be organized by any church, merely for the asking, provided the system is designed to render genuinely useful service, and not merely to talk. As regrettable as it may seem, preaching needs reinforcement. Every intelligent clergyman knows this, but not every clergyman knows what to do about it. 10. Small businessmen and retail merchants are in need of counsel in order to meet the competition of the new and improved methods of merchandising. Here is a field for men and women capable of rehabilitating the present worn-out methods. Some are engaged in this profession already, but the number is small in comparison with the need. One such specialist works in cooperation with the electric power companies, confining himself entirely to the rearrangement of lighting systems so as to display merchandise to better advantage. Within 1 week he made such improvements in one retail store that the store's business was increased more than 25% over its best previous month. This service should include rearrangement of stock, newly designed display counters, new window display equipment, and new and better advertising methods. The possibilities in this field are unlimited. 11. Every printing plant that has modern equipment has an opportunity for someone who is skilled in the preparation of new ideas and practical plans for printing and advertising. Someone who has creative vision may enter this field and make himself so useful that very soon he will own and operate a printer's service syndicate through which he will supply printing ideas for a chain of printing establishments. One man wrote a brief essay entitled, "What to Do with Boys and Girls," designed for use by business colleges, to be given away by them to the graduating classes of the high schools, and turned it over to a printer in Chicago. The last time he received a report of the sales, they had gone well beyond 10 million copies, on every 1,000 of which the printer made $3. Figure out his profits for yourself. Anyone skilled in writing, or in creating ideas requiring printing for their practical use, will find this a profitable mill that will keep on grinding out profits. 12. The soft drink field is a bottled bonanza. The person who puts his creative vision to work and produces a drink that will be as popular as Coca-Cola will be well on the road to wealth. The Coca-Cola business has made more people wealthy than any other soft drink in existence, but that does not mean that it cannot be equaled, or maybe excelled. The more soft drinks the public consumes, the less intoxicating beverages it will desire, so here is a field that should challenge the person who believes that strong drink is injuring the youths of the land. 13. The person who perfects a throwaway bottle that is strong enough to stand the pressure of carbonated drinks will be on the highway to riches. The bottle should be made of some such material as cellophane, so the contents will be visible. This may be an idea that requires the mastermind alliance with a chemist for its perfection, but it has possibilities that are unlimited for the accumulation of riches. The bottle must be made cheaply enough to permit its being thrown away after the contents are consumed. 14. Some clever woman, with creative vision, will make herself famous and richer than she needs to be by inventing some system of sewing for children that will teach the art of sewing as well as serve as entertainment. The patterns may be marketed through the 5 and 10-cent stores, together with a course of instruction on sewing. The system should be arranged so as to interest girls in making clothes for their own use. The desire for pretty clothes, inherent in all girls, will serve to help put the idea across. 15. The business of interesting prospective buyers of life insurance, automobiles, real estate, and other commodities, by telephone, will provide profitable employment for women with pleasing telephone voices plus creative vision. Contracts can be made with a great variety of merchants for the purchase of names of prospective buyers, and the work can be carried on from one's home. And so the story goes, on and on without end. Some who have found themselves through creative vision. The record of those who have found themselves through the inspirational influence of this philosophy is both extensive and phenomenal. They are to be found in almost every walk of life. If all their names were known and published, there would be no space left in this chapter for anything else. But I shall mention a few whose cases are typical of others. The seed of creative vision lies sleeping in brains where it is least expected, needing only an appropriate motive for its awakening. It exists in millions of brains whose owners live and struggle in penury and want, and will go back finally to the dust from whence they came without having discovered the riches they possessed. Shortly after a one-volume interpretation of a portion of this philosophy was published in 1937, under the title Think and Grow Rich, a copy of it fell into the hands of a salesman for the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. While he was reading the book, something in it, or maybe it was something back of the lines, touched off the spark of creative vision within his mind and started him on a new pathway to achievement. Mind you, the book did not teach him anything he did not already know. It merely awakened something he already possessed, but did not know he had. But that was enough. Without asking for an appointment, he telegraphed the author of the book that he was coming for an interview. We met in New York City and talked for 2 hours. When the salesman took the train back to Indiana, where he lived, he took with him a different attitude from the one he brought with him to New York. When he got back home, the town looked different from the way it looked when he left it. His friends looked different. His wife looked different. And they were different, because he himself had changed. He had come into possession of a giant amount of power that was destined soon to change his economic status. The first thing he did was to follow the instructions laid down in this philosophy, through which he chose a new definite major purpose. Then he followed through by creating a plan for the attainment of that purpose. He followed the instructions of the philosophy to the letter. His purpose was that of self-promotion into a bigger and better paying job. An heir was on the way, and he needed more money. Thus he had a definite motive for his choice of a new major purpose. After his plan was completed, he took the train for Akron, Ohio, to present it to his employer. He carried with him no feeling of fear or doubt. He knew before he started that his plan was sound and that it would work. That is a characteristic of those who awaken the creative vision that lies dormant within them. When he returned from Akron, his wife met him at the train. She saw his face at the window before the train came to a full stop, and she knew that he brought good news. In his inside pocket was a new contract with his employer. It called for a position as manager of a branch office. You see, when a man takes possession of the creative vision within himself, he becomes a center of attraction, a magnetized human being who attracts to himself what he wants. And, if you should ask this man, he would tell you that it was as easy to sell himself into a managership as it was to sell automobile tires to dealers. It was all a matter of what he himself desired. As this chapter was being written, I received a letter from an insurance salesman explaining how he had discovered and used creative vision himself. The letter was brief. On the surface of it there was no indication that any miracle had happened, but to me the letter told a story similar to those which are coming from all parts of the United States and from foreign countries. I knew that a miracle had happened. That is, that which had taken place inside the secret chambers of the salesman's mind constituted the nearest thing to a miracle of which I have any knowledge, for something had happened there which revealed to him the only sort of genius that any man possesses, that is the power of creative vision. Briefly reviewing the outward appearance of his case, I see that this is what happened. He came into possession of a copy of the book already alluded to. Somewhere, as he read the book, he uncovered the Aladdin's lamp that called to him the genies which had been sleeping in his brain.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Responding to its magic influence, he laid the book down, looked off into space, and began to ask himself questions. Why, he began, have I been spending my time selling small life insurance policies when I could just as well have so shaped my plans that I could sell large policies? Why, he continued, have I overlooked this something that I now feel urging me on to bigger and better things? Why have I not lifted my sights and aimed at the stars instead of shooting at the dust beneath my feet? Then the answer came. It came in definite terms, and he knew that he was not the same man who had begun reading that book. No, he was a new man. He had a different attitude toward the world. He had a different attitude toward himself and the work he had chosen as a career. He didn't stop by merely meditating. He recognized that a passive faith is no faith at all, so he began then and there to take possession of that strange power which had so recently revealed itself to him, and to express it in terms of action associated with his occupation. Picking up the city directory, he began to run his finger down the column of names. Finally he came to one that brought him to a stop. There was the name for which he was looking. It was the name of a man who was financially able to buy a large life insurance policy. Now, he mused to himself, why haven't I been to see this man before? Why have I been spending my time calling on men who could buy only small life insurance policies when I could have spent the same time calling on those who can buy large policies? Closing the directory, he arose from his seat, put on his hat and coat, and, without taking the time for further preparation, he went straight to the office of his newly chosen prospect. He was admitted with courtesy. He stated his business and discussed the details which life insurance salesmen usually have to talk about before they make a sale. In a little while he arose from his seat, shook hands with his new prospect, and thanked him for his courtesy. As he walked back to his office, he carried with him an application for the largest life insurance policy ever sold in Des Moines, or in that part of the country. The application called for a $2 million policy. That is more insurance than most life insurance men sell in 10 continuous years of hard effort. Yet, he had not worked hard. In fact, it had not seemed that he had worked at all, the sale was made so easily. And that is another of the queer traits of creative vision. Those who use it get their work done with a minimum amount of hard work. When he got back to his office, he sat down and had a long visit with himself. He went back, in his memory, to the day he began selling life insurance and came up, step by step, over every inch of the journey. One by one he called back to his mind the people to whom he had talked who had refused to buy from him, and wondered where he had fallen short. After he had reviewed in his mind all of his former interviews, he made another discovery so important in nature that it should become known to every man who is engaged in the business of selling life insurance. He discovered that life insurance is sold to the life insurance salesman himself, sold before he ever calls upon his prospective buyer, sold by his own mental attitude, his own faith, his own conviction that every man should provide himself with this sort of economic security, sold through the power of his own creative vision. And the beautiful part of this discovery is the fact that it placed this man in possession of an asset that will remain with him until he no longer needs it. No business depression can ever take it from him. The map of the world may be changed, and the people of the United States may perish through their own failure to look within their own minds for a power that can save them, but this man will never again become a slave to anything or anyone, because he has discovered the man within him, that other self, which cannot be enslaved. This other self is known as creative vision. The newspaper reporters heard of this miracle, and they besieged the salesman's office for a story. When they wrote the story, they neglected to mention the title of the book that had brought him to the most important turning point of his life, referring to it merely as a miracle book. When the story appeared, telephone calls began to come into the salesman's office. The wives of other men in Des Moines had read the story, and they wanted to know where they could get the book for their husbands. The bookstores were overrun with orders. Telegraph orders began to pour into the office of the publisher of the book, and that is how we learned what had happened. The same thing is happening throughout the United States. This miracle book, Think and Grow Rich, is helping to unlock the self-made prisons in which men have been confined because of their lack of recognition of the seed of creative vision within themselves. About 2 years after the publication of the book that started these two men on a new highway to achievement, I presented an autographed copy to one of my friends in Atlanta, Georgia. 6 months went by and nothing was heard of the gift. Then one day I received a letter with which was enclosed a newspaper clipping telling the story of another miracle the book had inspired. And here are the details. Somewhere in the pages of the book my friend made a discovery that he, too, was blessed by the power of Aladdin's lamp in the form of creative vision. Like the other two persons mentioned above, he not only recognized the power of this book, but he proceeded at once to make use of it. When the discovery was first made, he was working in a cafeteria, at a salary of $45 a week. One evening after his work had been finished, he put on his hat and coat and strolled down the street and began to put his creative vision to work in earnest. He counted the people who were passing that corner and made up his mind that it was a suitable location for a cafeteria. More important than this, he decided, mind you, the decision was his own, it was reached through his own initiative, that he would swap roles for himself and become the owner instead of the employee of a cafeteria to be located there. But he did not stop merely by thinking. The next day he began to put his thoughts into action. By the end of the week he had rented a suitable space for his new business. Within 3 months he had finished decorating and furnishing the place with the latest restaurant equipment, and moved in and began business. He did all this without 1 penny of money of his own. He did his financing by selling enough of that creative vision that had been asleep within him to a man with money who supplied the necessary operating capital in return for a half interest in the business. He paid for his own half interest with the experience he had gained in his former position, plus, and this is important, the use of his newly discovered creative vision that was so necessary in operating the business. Within a year the new cafeteria was out of the red and into the black to the tune of $1,000 a month. Thus creative vision had begun to pay dividends in the first year of its use. What it pays in the future is yet to be determined. Already the alert manager has had many offers from men who wish him to open up branches of his business in other places. Opportunity has found him out, and it is dogging his footsteps, begging to serve him. And that is another characteristic of the man who uses his creative vision. He finds himself a human magnet and attracts favorable opportunities as an electric magnet attracts steel filings. Today there still are worlds to conquer. Not all doors are closed to creative vision. The world eagerly awaits the man who originates, creates, and executes the products of vision. In the field of industrial chemistry the scope is unlimited for creative vision. Agriculture pleads for men of creative vision, who will help the farmer to check the ravages of synthetic scientific products which are making such inroads upon farm products. In textiles, aviation, education, food manufacturing, plastics and plywoods, cement and building materials, automobiles, coal tar products, rayons, radio, telephones, and in many other fields, the door is wide open for creative vision. Someday some man or woman with creative vision will produce an airplane which can land without danger, or an automobile which uses little or no gasoline, or a home which will not burn, or a cure for the common cold. Such an individual will be quickly rewarded, and may turn the world upside down. The promise of America includes ample rewards for those who exemplify the spirit of hard work, of initiative, and of creative vision. And you who are reading this chapter. What about you and your creative vision? What are you doing to arouse it and put it to work for you? When and where and how are you going to search within your own mind for that power to convert ideas and aims and plans into the riches of life? It is the goal of this chapter to help you answer these questions. It is the purpose of the author to aid you in converting your share of the great American way of life into whatever form of riches you desire, but the first move must be yours. If you make that move, and it indicates that you are in earnest, I will offer suggestions that may help you with the second step. Late in 1909 I sat in my automobile, at Fort Myer, Virginia, and watched the Wright brothers as they tried, in vain, to get their airplane off the ground. An old man sat on the running board of the automobile, watching the attempt to get the machine into the air. Turning to me with a look of doubt on his face, this old man said, "Ah, shucks, they hain't a-going to make that there thing fly. If God had wanted man to fly, he would have given him wings to do it with."
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Now we know that the old gentleman was mistaken. God had not given Wilbur and Orville Wright wings as a part of their physical equipment, but he did give them creative vision with which they created wings and did fly, just as he has given vision to millions of others who are born, live a natural lifetime, and pass on without having come to an active realization of their precious gift. In the early part of the 20th century a young mechanic and his wife were busily engaged with a contraption with which they were concerned. It consisted of a crude piece of pipe into which had been fitted a piston that moved in and out on a crankshaft. Working over the kitchen sink, the wife poured gasoline into that piece of pipe drop by drop, while her husband worked the piston up and down with one hand and pressed a button that sent an electric spark into the compressed air of the pipe with the other. Hour after hour they worked without results. Then, finally, the gas exploded and the thing gave one kick which sent the piston outward. Mind you, it gave just one lone kick, but in that single stroke of a crudely built machine was the destiny of an industry which now gives employment, directly and indirectly, to no less than 6 million people. At the present moment that huge industry is feverishly engaged in making some of the materials that will be needed to defend this nation against an insidious power that threatens to destroy the creative vision that founded the industry. What about this genius who founded the automobile industry in America? What ability does he possess which others do not have? You can boil it all down to one thing known as creative vision. But, Henry Ford has no more of this power than exists in millions of other minds. The difference is that he has discovered his power and has put it to work, while others have not. Henry Ford did not stop by merely discovering that he could turn the wheels of a buggy with a crudely built gasoline engine. He kept on using his creative vision, adding one refinement after another to his original automobile, until today the modern product of his mind is about as perfect as a piece of machinery can be. In every village, town, and city of the United States there is a potential Henry Ford walking around, perhaps without employment. Maybe he is complaining because of the lack of opportunity to get ahead. There are millions of such people who do not recognize that they are carrying around with them the seed of achievement which, if it were germinated and fed through action, would produce riches as great as those which Henry Ford earned. How will these sleeping spirits be awakened? What stimulating force can be applied to their minds that will cause them to look within for the seed of creative vision which is the beginning and the end of all individual achievements? This country needs creative vision now, as it never needed it before. The opportunity for the expression of personal initiative was never greater than it is now. The country has plenty of muscle power and brawn, but it is suffering with a shortage of brain power. And the tragedy of this shortage is in the fact that it is brainpower that makes jobs for men who have only muscle power to sell. There is no valid reason for any young man of high school age or over to be idle in the United States today, yet millions of youths of this age are making no move to make a future for themselves, although they know, or should know full well, that today's leadership will be theirs tomorrow. A little while ago I sent out a call for a male secretary. Back came the report from the business colleges and the high schools that there was a shortage of male graduates for this sort of work. Upon inquiry I discovered that the shortage is nationwide. Male stenographers are coming to be a thing of the past, although, as every well-informed businessman knows, there is no position in all industry which provides a young man with an opportunity for self-promotion equaling that of a secretary. Since the secretary becomes an understudy to the men who are managing industry, he has a chance to go to school under the trained faculties of the greatest of all schools, the University of Practical Experience, and to receive good pay for the privilege. When you hear anyone asking, what about this generation of youths? What is going to happen to them when they go out to look for jobs? I feel like shouting from the housetops that the answer to these questions lies within the minds of the youths themselves. Those who discover their dormant creative vision and put it to work will make jobs for themselves, just as others before them have done. The others will go on down the dusty road to failure, in the midst of an abundance of opportunities, just as this class always has done. Two things are essential for the unfolding and use of creative vision. One is a willingness to work and the other is a definite motive sufficient to inspire one to go the extra mile with the right mental attitude. Search as you may, but you cannot find anything to take the place of these. Work and motive, by themselves, are not sufficient guarantees of enduring success. What an interesting story we find when we dig into the achievements of a man like Henry Ford. He works, he has a definite motive behind his work, he goes the extra mile, perhaps adding a few additional miles for good measure, but, fortunately for him, and the entire world, he is going forward, not backward. Instead of using his vision to rape the world as some selfish military conquerors have done, Mr. Ford is using it to put wheels under the era of progress in which he lives. Anyone who masters this philosophy and learns to apply it will have much more power than any human being is capable of handling safely, unless, in his use of this power, he trims his sails in the direction of constructive service, as Henry Ford has done. As I approach the end of this chapter, I offer a suggestion that is rich in possibilities for all who recognize its value and act upon it. The suggestion involves no great amount of time or effort to carry it out. I suggest that you lay the chapter aside, after you finish it, and take personal inventory of yourself. Get away into some quiet spot, where you will not be interrupted for an hour, and have a visit with yourself, perhaps such as you have never had before. First of all, find out what you would like most to do. Then lay out plans to begin doing it and begin, right where you are, to carry out your plans. Second, recognize now and forever that whatever you get from life will depend upon what you give to life, through some form of useful service. Perhaps you may have some useful plan or idea with which you have done nothing. Bring it out into the open and place a description of it on paper. In Wallace's story of Ben-Hur is the description of a scene that serves as an appropriate closing for this chapter. It had its settings in the ancient city of Antioch, when the Roman Empire was at the height of its splendor. The rich and the idle had gathered to attend the chariot races. A wealthy man wanted to crown himself with glory by having his horses win, so he called his slaves together and chose one from the group to become the driver, promising him that if he won the race he would win with it his own freedom. The races started. Around and around the arena the drivers lashed the horses for their last bit of strength, but one of the drivers gained the lead from the very start and never lost it. In one hand he held the reins, and in the other he held the lash with which he drove the charging steeds for everything they had. His mighty arms stood out like ropes of iron. Someone yelled from the grandstand, "Those arms! Those arms! Where did you get them?" And he yelled back, "At the galleys for he was the slave who had been promised his freedom for winning. He had a motive, and the greatest of all motives at that, for the madness with which he drove his master's horses to victory. That motive was his desire for freedom. The Roman Empire crumbled and fell. The splendid city of Antioch has all but been forgotten, but still men fight on for personal freedom. Men do not rely on strong muscles now, as in the days of the ancients. Civilization has lifted us to an understanding of a greater power. It is the power of creative vision, and its source is the brain, not the brawn. With this thought I leave this chapter with you. I sincerely hope that before you lay it aside you will have taken inventory of your own mind, and that you will have found there both the seed of creative vision and an appropriate motive to influence its development through use. This country now needs leaders of creative vision as it has never needed them before. The most substantial progress is based on the long-range view. The creative vision of one generation develops into the laws and institutions of later generations of men. Where there is no vision the people perish. The loss of money is unpleasant. The loss of confidence in self is fatal to achievement. The combined wisdom and genius of mankind cannot conceive of an argument against the liberty of thought. Think before acting, not afterward.